Omikyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaevacha Patitanam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pujane Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschachati Gatani Hare Krishna. Great. Thanks everybody for joining in. Starting to read chapter 8 of Lilamrita, and it's called New Delhi, Crying Alone in the Wilderness. So I don't know if anybody would like to start the yagya going.
I'll start if you like.
Great. Thank you very much. Haribol.
New Delhi, Crying Alone in the Wilderness. I have got the clue of going back to Godhead just after leaving my present material body, and in order to take along with me all my contemporary men and women of the world, I have started my paper Back to Godhead as one of the means to the way. Please don't think of me as something wonderful or a madman when I say that I shall go back to Godhead after leaving my present material body. It is quite possible for everyone and all of us. From a letter to India's President, Mr. Rajendra Prasad. When Abai arrived in Mathura, he sought out Kesava Maharaj, who was now establishing his mat, and presented him with the deity of Lord Chaitanya. At Kesava Maharaj's request, Abai agreed to stay there and edit the Gaudiya Patrika. Abai was given a room, and for the first time, aside from brief visits, he lived in a mat with his godbrothers. As a senior, experienced devotee, Abai held classes and instructed the brahmacharis, who were young, uneducated, and even illiterate, in the disciplines of devotional service and the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. He had only recently begun his duties when Bhaktisaranga Goswami, another sannyas godbrother, asked Bhaktivedanta Prabhu to visit him in New Delhi at his ashram, Gaudiya Sangha. Both Kesava Maharaj and Bhaktisaranga Goswami recognized Abai as an established writer and editor and wanted to work with him. It was accepted amongst Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples that A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhu was an expert preacher and writer, whether in English, Hindi, or Bengali. Now Kesava Maharaj wanted Abai to stay and work on the Gaudiya Patrika, while Bhaktisaranga Maharaj, who had to go to Bengal, was requesting him to come to Delhi to produce the harmonist, known in Hindi as Sajjana Tosani. Abai was agreeable to Bhaktisaranga Goswami's proposition, and Kesava Maharaj consented on the condition that Abai also continue to edit the Gaudiya Patrika, at least by mail. As an editor, Abai was in his element, and he was happy to preach in cooperation with his good brothers. Although Abai didn't consider himself an accomplished scholar or author, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati had been pleased by his writings and had encouraged him to continue. And now these senior sannyasis of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati were turning to him for help. They were practically competing to see who would get the benefits of his services. Perhaps Abai thought this should be his life's work, serving humbly under the direction of his godbrothers. His ejection from Jhansi had been a kind of setback. At least it had left him temporarily unsure of how Krishna wanted to use him. But now his godbrothers seemed to be answering the question. Living and working in an ashram with brahmacharis and sannyasis was a way of life Abai had once considered too austere, and Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati had remarked, "Better he live outside your company." But now he would either have to struggle alone with nothing, or stay within the shelter of a friendly portion of the Gaudiya mat. Perhaps he could carry out his desires to preach Krishna consciousness within the ashrams of his godbrothers. Since he would soon be the editor of Sajjana Tosani, he began thinking of how to expand it. It was a scholarly Vaishnav journal, but cheaply produced and with a very limited circulation. He envisioned it surpassing India's slick illustrated weekly. It should be more popular than Time or Life magazines of America, and why not? Krishna was no poor man. Abai thought of how he could start an ambitious subscription program by approaching the many prominent and wealthy men of New Delhi. Then, by Krishna's grace, he would soon be able to print colour photos and use high-quality paper for Sajjana Tosani. He would give it his best effort, depending on Krishna. And while soliciting subscribers, he could take his book manuscripts and try to get them published. Dr. Alagappa in South India had wanted to publish his Gita Upanishad. No doubt there were many men like him, or perhaps Bhaktisaranga Goswami would be willing to publish Abai's works with funds from the Gaudiya Sangha. Okay, does anyone else want to meet?
I can give you a read. Can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I can give you a read now.
Yeah.
Abai soon received a letter from Bhaktisaranga Goswami's assistant, carefully instructing him how to travel to Delhi at the least expense. He was to travel by train first class to Delhi and from there take a tanga. Since tangas at the station gate charged too much, Abai should first walk about 100 meters towards the right-hand side of the station, where he would find a cheaper one. Were he to ride alone, he should pay no more than 1 rupee and 12 annas. But he should try to share the tanga with another passenger. That would be cheaper. Keep in the crematorium to your left-hand side, the assistant instructed him. If you look towards the right, then you will be able to see our red flag and the signboard written in Hindi and English. When you reach here, we will pay for the tanga. At the Gaudiya Sangha, Abai found a disconcerting state of affairs. In the absence of their guru, Bhaktisaranga Goswami, the brahmacharis were quarreling and shirking their duties, and as a result, the preaching and donation gathering were being neglected. Cleanliness, deity worship, cooking, and even peace amongst the devotees were below standard. And like most of the mass, all his god brothers, the Gaudiya Sangha was poor. Abai had come thinking he would be editing a magazine, but he found himself contending with a group of quarreling neophyte devotees. He learned that the brahmachari responsible for giving public lectures had not done any preaching. The devotees who had previously been holding kirtanas in people's homes were now negligent, and the errand boy refused to run because he had lost his bicycle. Then a brahmachari handed Abai a letter from Bhakti Saranga Goswami requesting him to take up the general management of the map. Inspiring everyone to be engaged in service, otherwise I do not know how we are going to print the English monthly magazine, since we don't have much money in the fund and since the brahmacharis are quite careless. Achinchan Maharaj wrote that he is unable to take the responsibility of the management. It would be very nice if you could keep your eyes on these affairs. And Abai found one obstacle in trying to produce Sajjana Tasani: no typewriter and bad relations with the printer. In a few days, Abai received another letter from Bhakti Saranga Goswami telling him what articles to print, cautioning him not to change essential elements in the magazine and reminding him of his special duty. I have asked Achinchan Maharaj to hand over the keys to my room to you so that you may use my room only for your office work. As you are there, you should try to maintain peace in the ashram while giving necessary instructions to one and all. Abai saw that he could do no editorial work until the laxity and petty quarreling in the ashram stopped. But when he tried to help Bhakti Saranga Goswami had directed, some of the devotees rebelled and even wrote to their spiritual master complaining. It was against many obstacles that Abai met the publisher's deadline for the August 1955 issue of Sajjana Tasani. Yet owing to the printer's delay, the magazine did not come out until September. When at last the first copies were delivered, Abai sent several to Bhakti Saranga Goswami in Calcutta, asking for his response. Abai never heard from his godbrother directly, but received further instructions from Bhakti Saranga Goswami's secretary, Ramananda, who pointed out various mistakes in the issue. Without mentioning whether Bhakti Saranga had been pleased with it, the errors were mostly technical matters of style. Abai had done the contents page in a different way and had not printed Bhakti Saranga Goswami's name, exactly as he had wanted it on his article. Regarding Abai's request for a typewriter, Ramananda wrote that if the matters are distinctly written, there is no necessity of them being given printed.
Abai wrote to Bhakti Saranga Goswami requesting him return to Delhi and establish a peaceful atmosphere in the mat. Regarding Sajjana Tosi, Bhakti Saranga Goswami had suggested that the paper for the cover be improved and that the whole magazine be done on nicer paper by an up-to-date press, and Abai agreed, but improvements depended on money. The suggestion that the paper may be printed from Calcutta is all right, but my suggestion is either in Calcutta or in Delhi, we must have our own press with good equipment so that we may be able to broadcast the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the all-important languages, especially Hindi and English. Hindi is meant for all Indian propaganda, where English is meant for worldwide propaganda. Abai further reported that since it was almost impossible to expect a printer to work speedily from a handwritten manuscript, he already rented a typewriter. He also mentioned his idea for increasing the number of subscribers. Abai's son Vrindavan came to live with him for a few months at the Gaudiya Sangha. There was no question of Abai returning to his family, and Vrindavan simply associated with his father, following the routines of the mat and helping Abai in his duties. One day, a prominent advocate, the president of Hindi Masaba, paid an unexpected visit to the Gaudiya Sangha. The mat was mostly deserted and there was no prasadam on hand. So Abai and Vrindavan received the prominent guest cooking for him, offering prasadam and acquainting him with the activities of the Sangha. When Abai wasn't busy managing the disorganized mat and working on Gaudiya Patrika and Sajjana Tosi, he spent his time preparing a Hindi translation of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Although he was more accustomed to writing in English and Bengali, he reasoned that as long as he was preaching in Hindi-speaking areas such as a book would be important. Bhakti Saranga Goswami wrote he wanted to print only 500 copies of Sajjanatosi for a September issue, but a boy wanted to print more. After making an agreement with the printer, and the changes would be the same for 1,000 copies as for 500, he wrote to Bhakti Saranga Goswami, informing him of the good news. A boy also told him that he had recently secured a donation of printing paper and that he had arranged for a 1/4 reduction in the postal charges. So why the matter of saving some paper? We shall not print the full number. In my opinion, we should print more than 1,000 copies every month and distribute them in large scale. But Bhakti Saranga replied through a brief postcard that they should print no more than 500. A boy continues his attempt to improve Sajjanatosi. For him, it was not a perfunctory duty, but absorbing preaching. In a letter to Bhakti Saranga Goswami, expressed anxiety over waiting for him to send articles for the next issue. Funds were scarce, so scarce that a boy had no decent dhoti, and yet he continued to envision a glorious future for Sajjanatosi. I wish to see the paper just to the standard of illustrated weekly with numerous pictures in order to make a very, very popular literature. For this, I wish to move myself to secure subscribers as well as advertisers. I wish to visit good businessmen, insurance companies, and government offices in this connection. But I have no proper dress at all. I want 2 sets of good dress in order to take up the responsibility, and I shall be glad to have your decision on this matter. It is my heart's desire that this paper is improved to the highest elevation. A boy also requested that Bhakti Saranga Goswami help him publish his Hindi Chaitanya Charitamrita. Some non-Bengali gentlemen were demanding the book and had assured the boy they would pay 25 rupees per volume. A boy requested the loan of 600 rupees under any arrangement suitable to Bhakti Saranga Goswami for publishing the first part of this work. If this part is sold out, a boy wrote, other parts will automatically come out. But just as life in the Gaudiya Sangha and work on the Sajjanatosi under Bhakti Saranga Goswami's hand-produced strain for a boy's ambition for increased circulation and his strong editorial opinions also created strain for Bhakti Saranga Goswami. In response to a boy's letter, Bhakti Saranga Goswami's secretary Ramananda wrote a letter full of flowery praises of Bhakti Vedanta Prabhu, but with intent of diminishing him from his position in the Gaudiya Sangha. With innumerable humble obeisances at the lotus feet of Vaishnava, Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Prabhu. We received your letter written to Guru Maharaj on the 5th, 1055. Your project is very lofty and you're a well-wisher of our society. We got to know that also. Since the last 2 months, in spite of so many difficulties, the difficulties of prasadam and misunderstanding the devotees there, and in spite of various other difficulties, the kind enthusiasm that you have shown that is possible only for an elevated Vaishnava like yourself. You're a favorite Vaishnava of Srila Prabhupada and a friend of the special associates of Srila Prabhupada. Most of the devotees in the Gaudiya Sangha ashram in Delhi are new and less respectful. They cannot give proper respect to an elevated personality like yourself, especially the lofty speculations that you have. Our society at present circumstances has little ideas. We hope with all your qualities, very soon you will become settled independently and fulfilling the desires of Srila Prabhupada and start preaching very widely. We are suspecting that it won't be possible for an able and respected Vaishnava like yourself to stay there long, adjusting with the illiterate and less educated devotees of the Gaudiya Sangha in Delhi. Moreover, you are the head of the editorial board of Srimad Kesava Maharaj Vedanta Samhita Gaudiya Patrika and Bhagavat Patrika. So if you spend much time if you spend much time in our ashram, then he might become annoyed. With many devotees, he is settling out to circumambulate land of Braj, and we are sure that he will need your assistance in this parikram. So you consider all the pros and cons, and if you do not neglect the duty as leader of his organization, we will be pleased. Some articles have been sent for the October issue of Sajjanatosi, and some more might be sent. We will be very much obliged if you would instruct Kesavananda Prabhu to publish the October issue. We hope that Sri Guru Maharaj will be able to personally publish the November and December issues. We wish to transfer it to the Kolkata from this month of January. Sri Guru Maharaj has become old, and most of the time he is dependent on us. We are happy to know that you're trying very hard to publish Chaitanya Charitamrita in Hindi, but at the present circumstances, it won't be possible for us to invest 600 rupees from our fund in order to print that. Because Sri Guru Maharaj has taken up many projects in different directions, now he has spent a lot of money, he can't take responsibility for printing that book. Kesava Prabhu wrote that your clothes are getting torn, so buy a pair of clothes from our fund at the temple, and if the devotees commit offences that you wrote to speak due to their short-sightedness, please forgive them. Signed, your servant of the Vaishnavas, Sri Ramananda Das.
April, yeah, want me to read? Okay. It was not a fact that Abai was being called for leadership in Keshava Maharaj's parikram, although it was a good excuse for Ramananda's suggesting that Abai leave the Gaudiya Sangha. So after living as a dutiful member in the ashrams of Keshava Maharaj and Bhakti Saranga Maharaj, Abai was again on his own. Without income or institutional shelter, Abai began staying in various homes in Delhi, living from week to week wherever he received an invitation. In terms of food, clothing, and shelter, these were the most difficult times he had ever gone through. Since his childhood, there had always been plenty of food and good clothes, and no question of where he would live. He had been the pet child of his father, and he had received special guidance and affection from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, but now Abai sometimes felt alone. Homeless, he moved around Delhi from one temporary residence to another, a Vishnu temple, a room at the Kapoor College of Commerce. But he was seeking donors, preaching from Bhagavad Gita, writing. His goal wasn't to find a permanent residence, but to print his transcendental literature and to establish, or join forces with, a pure, powerful movement for spreading Krishna consciousness. Abai made a list of several books he wanted to publish. 1. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Hindi, 2,000 pages. 2. Gita Panishad, English, 1,200 pages. 3. Science of Devotion, English, 300 pages. 4. Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan Movement, English, 300 pages. 5. Message of Godhead, English, 300 pages. 6. Bhagavana Katha, Bengali, 50 pages. But to print he needed donors. He called on wealthy men in their offices and homes, presenting his manuscripts and explaining his mission. He had a list of donors, but few responded. And when he did receive a donation, it was usually only 5 or 10 rupees. Occasionally, he would receive a letter of appreciation or endorsement. One appreciation came from Narain Das Rai Bahadur, a retired executive engineer and secretary of the Birla Mandir Trust, who had attended a public reading Abai had held in the presence of a popular guru, Mother Anandamoyi. Impressed by Abai's reading from his Hindi Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mother Anandamoyi had donated 50 rupees and suggested that Abai also visit a well-known sadhu, Sri Hari Baba, who was lying ill in hospital. Abai, accompanied by Narain Das, had then visited Hari Baba, who had claimed that Abai's reading put him into ecstasy. Meanwhile, Narain Das was becoming inclined to help, and in December he wrote a letter suggesting that everyone extend their helping hand for the successful publication of Sri A.C. Bhaktivedanta's various writings in Hindi, English and Bengali. I wish him all success in his noble attempt. Abai would show this and other such letters to prospective supporters. In Delhi, it was not difficult to see government ministers, judges, lawyers, business executives, religious heads. There was always someone willing to hear seriously and occasionally to offer support. Thus Abai, with the two dotis and kurtas the Gaudiya Sangha had supplied him, with his ability to preach and convince, but with little support and no fixed residence, continued his preaching undaunted. Writing and trying to publish was only half his effort. The other half was taking part in efforts for a world movement like the League of Devotees. Through Narain Das, Abai inquired whether there might be a way he could do his work under the auspices of the Birla Mandir, one of the largest and richest temples in Delhi. Abai proposed that he be put in charge of propaganda in the English language, both within India and abroad. Since Narain Das considered himself a follower of Sanatana Dharma, Abai wrote to him explaining how the teachings of Bhagavad Gita set forth the real Sanatana Dharma. Abai had many ideas about how Sanatana Dharma, as the eternal religion for all living entities, could be expanded and practically applied if Narain Das could but help him. Someone wants to take over? No? Oh, okay. I want to train up 40 educated youths to learn this science of transcendental knowledge and just prepare them for going to foreign countries for missionary work. To start immediately an English paper or to revive my paper, Back to Godhead, in the style of Illustrated Weekly of India. To organise a Sankirtan party, which shall not be only good singers and musicians, but must also be used to practice sadhana or self-realisation.
Do you want me to take over? Want me to read a bit?
I don't mind reading.
Okay, lovely.
Okay. Abai promised that as soon as he had done some groundwork, he, along with men and equipment, could start for foreign countries to propagate this missionary work. But he admitted also that he was externally in dire straits. Kindly do arrange for the above immediately and give me a proper place to live. I must remove from this temporary quarter by Monday next latest. Directors of the Birla Mandir did not take Abai up on his offer, but thought of another way of engaging them. He would hold a public meeting at the Birla Mandir to help generate interest to the League of Devotees. He approached Sri R.N. Agarwal, President of the Delhi Municipal Committee, who, after hearing the names of several respectable people who would be attending, agreed to preside over the meeting. Abai set the date for December 22nd and printed 500 announcements and 200 invitation cards. Striking a cosmopolitan note, he stated in his announcement, "By the grace of the Almighty, Delhi is becoming the centre of cultural association of the world." The leaders of both Russia and India had recently pointed to the need for cultural contact between all nations, but the highest culture Abai suggested was scientific spiritual knowledge. Therefore, the best cultural resources in the world existed in India. And these resources, Abai stressed, should not be left to the unorganized sadhus and sannyasis, but should be taken up by important members of society in an organized way. The December 22nd Hindustan Times listed the meeting of the League of Devotees in the Today Engagements column, along with announcements for meetings of the Rotary Club, Tagore Society, the Indian Council of World Affairs, Bharat Scouts, and the Indian Pharmaceutical Congress. The League's meeting began with a kirtan led by Professor H. Chand, and then A.C. Bhaktivedanta, founder and secretary of the League of Devotees, explained his movement's objectives. Then Narain Das spoke and afterwards read a number of proposed resolutions from the founder secretary, attesting that the persons present supported the League of Devotees and that they recommend that the central government of India also support it as a movement for world peace based on Gandhian principles. After adoption of the resolutions, the meeting closed with another kirtan and prasadam. Abai was convinced that if his well-wishers and fellow humanitarians would support him on a grand scale, he could create a movement for world peace based on the principles of devotional service to Lord Krishna. For his role was simply to present Krishna consciousness to whomever he could. The results were up to Krishna. Abai was aware that the good intentions of most of the participants in his Birla Mandir meeting would not go past that one meeting, but he wasn't discouraged. Through all his tireless evangelism, he maintained a philosophic duality. In one sense, he was already fully satisfied. He was happy to be working on behalf of his spiritual master. Although he was changing addresses so fast that his mail could hardly catch up to him, he wrote a newspaper ad for a home study course. Educational. Study the spiritual secret of Bhagavad Gita at home by correspondence and be a strong man. Full course fee, ₹50 only. The instruction is imparted not in the ordinary imaginative way of qualified interpretations, but in the parampara system of preceptorial succession. All questions are properly solved. Apply AC Bhaktivedanta. Students of all communities and nationalities are welcome. He had not published Back to Godhead in 4 years, since 1952, but he decided to revive it. Back to Godhead was a mission worthy of his full attention, and he took all his efforts to collect the funds, compose the articles, see to the printing, and then distribute 1,000 copies. The money he would raise by obtaining interviews and soliciting donations. One donor and friend was Justice Bipin Chandra Mishra, a Supreme Court judge in New Delhi. Justice Mishra, he used to come to me once a month. I gave him donations for his paper. It was only a 4-page magazine. It showed his study of the subject and his earnestness and his devotion to Lord Krishna. He appeared to be a very simple man and modest, and it was pleasant to talk to him. He had a smiling demeanour. The main thing was his humility. He could talk with affection and confidence, and he knew we were discussing things near to God. So every talk with him would sublimate us. It was a rather important personality at that time, and in religious affairs, where he would not be expected to make any contribution to the main religious life of Delhi at that time because of the language difficulty, because his aim was to reach the English-educated persons, not the Hindi ones, and also because his means and his popularity were not at all established. The magazine did not have a wide appeal among these people. Other religious leaders were all well established. The only thing that impressed one, and was worth noticing at that time, was the simplicity of his abiding faith in God's name and his mission. Anybody else?
Writing articles was no problem. By the grace of his spiritual master, he was neither short of ideas nor unable to set them down. Translating and commenting on the Vaishnava scriptures, his pen flowed freely. He was inspired by the miracle of the press, the Brihat Mridanga. The work of writing his message down and printing it 1,000 times, with the awareness and urgency of speaking directly to everyone, not just people in Delhi or India, but everyone, put Abai into an ecstatic meditation. He would contemplate how copies of Back to Godhead could reach thoughtful people who might read them gratefully. Nor was maintenance a problem. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami had declared that a devotee's problem was not food, clothing, or shelter. If one had no bed, he could always lie on the ground and use his arms for a pillow. For clothes, he could always find some rejected garments in the street. For food, he could live on fruits from the trees. And for lodging, he could stay in the mountain caves. Nature supplies all necessities. A transcendentalist should not flatter materialists to maintain himself. Of course, Abai wasn't living in the mountains or jungle, but in the city of New Delhi. Yet he had virtually adopted the renounced mode Sukadeva had suggested. Not to punish his body or prove himself pure and uncompromising, but because he had to live in poverty if he wanted to regularly produce Back to Godhead. For Abai, it was a great labor of love, and purchasing paper for printing became a priority even before eating. Neglecting his personal needs for preaching was a manifestation of his faith in Krishna, of which Abai suffered no scarcity. He had full faith that if he served Krishna, he would be provided for. To work alone was not an insurmountable problem. It was pleasant and simple. It was better than having to manage the neophyte inmates of the Gaudiya Sangha. The ecstasy of working hard to serve his spiritual master was not a problem. The problem was the condition of the world. According to the Shastras, the current age, Kali Yuga, would create continual degradation in society. And Abai could see this evidenced every day in Delhi. Delhi, formerly known as Hastinapur, had been the ancient capital of King Yudhisthira, who 5,000 years before, under the patronage of Lord Krishna, had been the most opulent king in the world, and whose citizens had been fully protected and provided for. Now, after 1,000 years of foreign subjugation, India was again independent, and New Delhi was the capital. Yet even in Abai's relatively brief 60 years of experience, he had seen Indian culture, which in his childhood had retained much of the original purity of the Vedic age, degrade. Now he saw a society in which his countrymen were victimized by the propaganda that they could be happy in gross materialistic indulgence. The British had introduced tea, tobacco, meat, and factories. And now, even after independence, these were a part of India's new way of life. Having driven away the British, the Indians were imitating Western ways, and India's leaders were deliberately ignoring the Vedic principles of God consciousness, the very treasures India was meant to distribute to the whole world. Abai had seen how India had abandoned her spiritual heritage and gone running after the modernization of the West. But now, where was that material advancement? Were Indians any happier in their independence than they had been in British days? To Abai, the overpopulated city was a hell of ruffians and fools. Although thousands of poor people were employed in the burgeoning steel mills and tire factories, their living conditions had worsened. Abai voiced his concern about these conditions in his Back to Godhead. Could the poor eat the nuts and bolts produced in the factories? Could they be nourished by cinema, television, or sex songs on the radio? The leaders were unable to see that abandoning spiritual principles had led to the very ills they officially abhorred: a decadent, rebellious youth, corruption in every area of civic life, and even economic instability and scarcity. When Abai had been a youth in Calcutta, there had been no cinema billboards advertising lurid sexual fantasies. But now India had developed the third largest movie industry in the world, and film advertisements were all over Delhi. Beef shops and liquor shops had sprung up. The newspapers regularly ran editorials deploring the degradation of young Indian boys who teased, insulted, and affronted women on the street. Women's leagues complained about increased juvenile promiscuity and the obscene treatment of women in films and advertisements. But there were no upright brahmanas or saintly administrators to do anything about it. Abai saw the need for a re-spiritualization of society, but society was rushing headlong in the opposite direction. In February, even as Abai was trying to publish his Back to Godhead, Prime Minister Nehru, while speaking with the concern of India's crisis of the spirit, simultaneously launched another 5-year plan for rapid industrialization. Everyone from the Prime Minister down to the common man was concerned about the symptomatic problems, but no one seemed to understand that the real problem was the lack of God consciousness. Abai had to deliver the medicine for the ills of Kali Yuga. He knew it was needed on a much larger scale than he could reach on his own, but even to administer one issue of Back to Godhead was almost beyond his means. Writing the articles, typing them, taking them to the printer and distributing them should not have been the work of one lone, impoverished devotee. But in working with his godbrothers, he had met with their decided lack of organization and their lack of desire for vigorous preaching. Bhakti Saranga Goswami had seemed determined to keep Sajjana Tosari small, and his map, like so many others, had been ineffectual in attracting new members. This was the petty-mindedness that would cripple preaching. Therefore, he was now working alone on a small scale, happy in his spiritual welfare work, yet aware that his 4-page newspaper was only a drop of water in the desert. I don't know if anyone wants to carry on, or we're halfway through the chapter. So maybe we could stop and have some reflections if anyone wants to share anything.
I was just thinking it's a sign of a great man that he sees all these things and thinks of it as his personal responsibility to do something about it. The lack of spiritualization, the degradation of the world. He's personally seeing how he can do something about it. And not a lot of people think like that, do they? And he's thinking about it on a large scale as well, which is amazing. But yeah, before that, I found the chapter it was a bit depressing almost, like there was lots getting in his way of him doing what he wanted to do, but he just kept going, really, didn't he? So that was my impression of it up until then, but he's still got amazing determination and enthusiasm for doing something about it all.
Yeah, we were talking in one of the Bhagavad Gita classes recently, weren't we? How everybody these days, everybody seems to know their right, but nobody seems to know their responsibilities. And that kind of, in that sense, we've got society's got everything back to front and upside down. So we all kind of know what we're owed, or we think we know what we feel like we're owed, but we don't really know what we're supposed to give. I remember we were saying how like children's rights are like parents' responsibilities, you know, and like women's rights are like men's responsibilities, and vice versa, and it kind of goes like that. So I suppose, yeah, he sees it in terms of that. He can see that he has this thing, and there's quite a lot of responsibility involved in having Krishna consciousness in your life, because it's you're kind of duty bound to try and share it, I suppose, isn't it? Like, I think in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he lists non-violence as one of the items of knowledge. And then in Prabhupada's purport, he gives this brilliant description of ahimsa, which really always blew my mind when I first read it, because I was going to like Buddhist things. So they talk about like not hurting other people, you know, not eating meat and trying to speak kind words and things like that. And Prabhupada writes that he said, people suffer because they don't have Krishna consciousness. So if you don't give people Krishna consciousness, then that's an act of violence. So it's got this like really broad, you know, it's a really like a whole nother level of what ahimsa means. So he basically says, if you want to practice ahimsa, you have to go and give people Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, you're sitting there and watching them while they suffer, and you have the medicine to cure them, but you refuse to give it to them. So it's quite heavy actually. It's like quite a serious thing, but yeah.
Yeah, I read in the Bhagavatam like that too, that the soul sometimes is considered the animal. So if you don't practice spiritual life, then you're still considered an animal killer, even if you're vegetarian. I read that.
I think it says it also in, it says a similar thing in Ishopanishad, talks about the killer of the soul.
Yeah, right, yeah.
The dark visions, because obviously you're not actually killing the soul, but you're killing its spiritual sort of propensities by just covering it over with Maya. So
well, one soldier that was in Iraq said that, you know, his experience was every time like he killed somebody, he was killing a part of his soul, sort of thing, you know.
Wow.
So you can see the same every time we do something that's not spiritual. Not to probably that extent, you know, most people don't, but, you know, we're kind of full of life, or kind of like we're a bit you know, we've got a bit of life about us, or, you know what I mean, depending on to what extent we practice spiritual life, you know. We've got, you know, because the soul's got an amazing amount of life. The soul is like very, very powerful. So depending on how we apply the process and how enthusiastic we are, you know, like how much life we've got about us in it, you know. Because, you know, so if we get enthusiastic, we feel like, you know, like there's no end to my energy, you know what I mean? I could like go on like all day, you know, and sometimes I feel like that. It's like, wow, I'm just so full of energy, can't sit down, you know. It's like, got to do something, you know. I feel like that at times. So I can relate to, yeah, the you know, the soul being you kill the soul by, you know, we read about all these activities and that were happening in India, even when Prabhupada was there in the 50s. It was that all these things were coming about and sort of killing the spiritual life, you know. But I liked how Prabhupada says Krishna is not a poor person, and he thought big. Prabhupada always said, think big. Don't think like, you know, because even Mukunda Maharaj, he says, when he was in New York, he thought it would just always be a small spiritual group. He never thought it would expand into like an international society. He didn't think that way. So I think we should think the same. Think big, you know, what's the harm? We've got nothing to lose, you know, but if we endeavour, you know, everything's a sort of whatever success is a gain, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they all, when Prabhupada incorporated ISKCON as like a legal entity, and which he did in, I think it was in 1966, and the young devotees at the New York temple helped him. And he said, we're going to call it the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. They all laughed. They were like, international? Like, what the hell are you on about? Like, we're just hanging out with Swami in New York, you know, like I had absolutely no idea what his mission was. But obviously, there's this whole backstory that we get to hear now, which they wouldn't have known. But like, they thought international. Like, what are you on about? We're just sitting in like a shop in, in New York somewhere. But yeah, he always... because Krishna can do whatever he likes. I mean, he is doing whatever he likes. So it's really just, I always like when Prabhupada said about the Sankirtan movement, he said that Lord Chaitanya has said that this is going to spread across the whole world, every town and village. So that's a given. Whether you like it or not, that's going to happen. So then he said the only question really is whether you want to get involved and get some of the mercy and the glory of being part of it, or if you want to stay out and suffering. So it's kind of like that, isn't it? You haven't really got you've only really got two choices in the world, to be honest. You either get on the Sankirtan program or you sit it out and wait for another, whatever it is, billions of years for Lord Chaitanya to come back.
I liked a story that Mukunda Maharaj told as well about Prabhupada. They'd no electricity in the place, and Prabhupada said to Mukunda Maharaj, go down to the electricity company and tell them to put the electricity on, tell them we're a charity, tell them we're sadhus, you know. And Mukunda Maharaj is like, you can't do that in this country, you know. They just tell me to go away, you know. And Mukunda Maharaj didn't actually go down. He didn't go. So then Mukunda Maharaj went out and he came back, and the electricity was on. And Prabhupada had went down himself, you know. He went down himself to the electricity company and he said to him, look, I'm a monk, put the electricity on, please, you know. And he listened to him and he put it on. So, you know, Prabhupada would do things like that nobody else would do, you know. It's like totally amazing, you know. Totally, like, you know, he just kind of expected these people to do something for him because he was a monk, you know. And because Prabhupada had that attitude towards him, they would do it, you know. Do you ever find that if you've got a certain sort of mood towards people, you know, very kind of straightforward, a lot of faith in what you're saying, people just accept, you know what I mean? they just accept, you know. It's like, in one sense, we're very fortunate in the Hare Krishna movement because a lot of the public don't really know about Krishna consciousness. So it's up to us to give them an impression, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like I was distributing books on the street, and some days, not every day, right? But some days I could just walk up to people. I say, I'm from the Krishna temple. This is a Krishna book. Give them the book. Tell them like romance, adventure, stories from ancient India, and like we're doing good work. Can you give something? And I would just put it completely straightforward to people, you know. I know other devotees who do different yoga and all. I don't see anything wrong with that, but sometimes it's just completely straightforward, and because it was just straightforward and I had faith in what I was doing, people would just give me money and take a book, you know. No problem, just like, ah, sure, there you go, and they walk away happily with the book, you know. So I think it's kind of up to us, you know, like, okay, just kind of, you know, be ourselves. We're all different personalities, do, you know, spread Krishna consciousness in a way, you know, suits our personalities as individuals, you know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, completely. I think faith is the important thing. Like I remember distributing books, and there's one sloka from Bhagavad Gita, and Vijay Prabhu, who's a big book distributor, he says he chants it like japa. And I learned the Sanskrit. I can't remember it all now, but in the middle of it, because I used to chant it all the time when I was distributing books, and in the middle of it, it's talking about how you have the soul, the super soul, and the material body, and it says it describes the super soul as being like the overseer and the permitter. It mentions as other adjectives, but it says he's the overseer and the permitter of all the activities. So in the other person's heart, like nothing gets sanctioned unless the super soul wants it to. So you're always kind of working under Krishna's authority. So I guess like with Prabhupada, like he knew that he had complete faith and realization that everything is going on under Krishna's authority. So he can, because he's working for Krishna, he can do whatever he wants basically, as long as it's in line with those principles. Like I heard some great stories. I think it was Shruta Kirti Prabhu. He was saying that like because he traveled with Prabhupada a lot, that on aeroplanes, Prabhupada would like, he'd get up to use the bathroom when the plane was taking off, you know, or he'd have his lunch or his prasadam when the plane was going, like whatever the rules were, Prabhupada didn't really care, and he didn't really offend or upset anyone, but like he was just on his own program, you know. If it was time to eat, he'd eat. And if the aeroplane says that the table can't come down, well, what can I do? I have to eat. You know, he's like, he was on this whole other level of where he was on his own program, but not in an egotistical way. So I think it sort of feels like that. When you're really absorbed in Krishna consciousness, you really just see everything is happening under Krishna's arrangement and authority. And so being audacious doesn't really, you don't really bat an eyelid, do you, about, you know, being straight with people or being audacious or whatever it is you need to do. You just do it because Krishna arranges everything for you. But then when we get on the mental platform, it gets a bit difficult then. So it's very important, I guess, to be really absorbed like that, isn't it?
Personality is great, isn't it? I mean, personality is amazing, you know. It's like, you know, Krishna is a personality, you know. It's like, I'm not Krishna, I'm a different personality, you know. I'm a completely different personality. Krishna is a personality, and I can talk to Krishna in a way that, you know, he'll respond to me as a personality, you know what I mean? It's not like, you know, back to yoga's, you punch a wee card in a machine, it's like 16 rounds, 4 regular principle, 8-hour service a day, clank, you know. It's like, I mean, we all have our difficulties, we all have it's Kali Yuga, you know, we all have our faults and weaknesses, but, you know, we just say to Krishna, please accept, you know, and it's like, okay, you know, we can feel, okay, Krishna is still supporting me, Krishna is still with me, and we do things that, you know, each of us as individual personalities, you know, we can do things that, well, nobody else can do, you know, and we've all got a relationship with Krishna that nobody else has got. So it's like, you know, Krishna's not bothered if you put the table down on the aeroplane when you're not supposed to and go to the toilet and all. You know, somebody like Prabhupada is above even the rules of regulations of like bhakti yoga, you know, he doesn't need to go to a morning program or, you know, say certain prayers at certain times like everyone else, you know. He's on the level, he's already on the level of love of God, you know. So in that sense, he's relating to Krishna fully as a personality, you know. So I think personality, even, you know, even with materialist stuff, personality is quite attractive. It's like it's nice in a way that people have got personality, you know. I think personality is great myself, you know.
I think people so people tend to reciprocate and respond to it because there isn't really very much of it actually in the world. Everything is very impersonal, and like, you know, if you go out onto the street, like I was in a band for, I don't know, whatever it was, 10 years or something, and we toured the UK a few times, and you can't tell. I remember being in like Reading and looking around. I had to ask what town we were in. It happened quite a few times. I had to say to the guys, like, so where are we now? We are at Reading, or it could be Liverpool or Manchester, because every damn high street has got a WH Smith's, a post office, a Weatherspoons. It's like, so there's no character to anything anymore. So when someone comes along who's brimming with that, which devotees are, it's about cultivating, isn't it? Like you're saying, cultivating personality and character, then people really reciprocate with it. They're really like sort of blown away. And then you create an environment in which people can actually be themselves. It's like when we just spoke with the student group that we have on Zoom last night, because we're starting up the student program again. And in every single situation, there's like a way you're supposed to be. You go into a seminar, you have to act like this, or you go for a job interview, you have to act like that. And like there's all these kinds of like constrictions on how you can't really be yourself. It's really hard. You're always pretending to be this or that to try and fit in. So when you have that space where people can just let loose and actually be themselves, wow, it's really amazing, powerful thing, really powerful. It really changes people's hearts.
Yeah, I read recently, you know, it's like Prabhupada was talking about Krishna being a personality, and he was like, you know, and personalism is so boring, you know. It's like there's nothing to talk about, you know. It's like we're all one, you know. Krishna is not a person, because you ever read a book and it's like describing Krishna, and I mean, you could sit and read it all day, right? It's like his yellow dhoti and the jewels and his smiling face, and you know, it's really attractive, you know, and you think, wow, you know, it's like, it's interesting to read. I mean, if you're that compared to like our glowing light, you know, we're all going to go into this glowing light and merge into one, and we're all just going to glow, and you know, we're not going to smile, we're not going to say anything, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to, you know, all merge into one and glow, you know. It's like, it's pretty boring, isn't it? You know, I mean, it's like, you know, impersonalism, it's pretty boring, isn't it, compared to personalism, eh?
Yeah, you can understand why people want to do it, because they're, you know, interpersonal relationships and everything are so nightmarish in this world. Everything is so contaminated that you can see why people may just kind of reject it. But actually, it's like just hearing about Krishna, or even hearing about the devotees, you know, it's, even if they're not like pure devotees, just hearing about their activities and their character and what they get up to is, yeah, it's nectar. So lucky to have this Lilamrita, because it's just so full of, it's like Prabhupada's constantly doing things, interacting with people, and it's full of activity and relationships. But at the same time, it's like dripping with nectar. There's no no pain or, you know, anything like that there. It's really amazing.
But it shows you all the difficulties he went through, and look how successful he was in the end. It just shows for us as well, you know.
And I
You
thought
know,
it was nice in that chapter, actually, that even when he's not successful, it says he feels ecstatic.
yeah, he just gets on with it. Yeah.
Satisfied. He says it, even though it's really, he feels satisfied serving his guru, and he feels ecstatic meditating on this, you know, preaching work that he's trying to do,
Yeah,
even though it's, you know, externally it's nothing's happening actually, really. But that's really reassuring that actually in any set of circumstances you can relish that Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, I'm having my difficulties right now, you know, relating to devotees, but and myself, I'm really happy. I'm just getting on, chanting around, reading the books, you know. I'm really happy inside, you know what I mean? I'm having a good time, but I just wish my kind of relations with certain devotees were a bit, you know, better, but you know, I'm just continuing on anyway. You know, enjoy listening to bhajans, you know, enjoy associating with the devotees, reading the books, you know, doing my service. It's like, yeah, it's great, it's brilliant, it's fantastic, you know. I just can't quite convey that to some devotees, you know. It's a bit like that for me right now, but you're reading like the Lilamrita, you're thinking, my God, what I'm going through is nothing to what Prabhupada went through, you know. I mean, he established the whole like ISKCON, you know, and I mean, he went into New York, it was all like 20-odd-year-old hippies and all that, and I mean, Prabhupada just laughed a lot, didn't he? He just laughed a lot, and sometimes he was so like, he couldn't believe what some of the devotees were doing, but he just got on with it anyway, didn't he? And, you know, look what happened, you know, it was like, you know, kind of the holy ISKCON came from that, you know. So, I mean, who knows what we can do from now, you know what I mean? ISKCON's a wonderful, beautiful organization, you know. There's definitely, you know, potential that we can do now that maybe, you know, some people can see, some people can't see, like described in the book. Prabhupada, you know, wanted to do big time things, but most of the people in the mat, they didn't want to do that, you know. They didn't want to do that, you know. So I can see myself in this. Certain devotees fit into certain groups, you know. Certain devotees fit into certain circumstances, and it's just working that out, you know what I mean? Some devotees maybe want to stay in the temple, maintain the temple. Some devotees may want to go out. So it's just a case of working out, well, who's going to do what and how to cooperate with each other. That's the way I see it, you know. It's just a matter of working that out. Then we can go on and like do amazing things, you know. I mean, we're already doing amazing things, but we can do even more amazing things, you know. I feel if we concentrate on giving people Krishna, all the inner conflicts will just fade into insignificance, you know. I've always found that myself, even if I'm, you know, 50 miles away from a temple and I ain't been in a temple for 5 years, if I just concentrated and continued giving people Krishna in whatever way I could, like even if it was just giving sweets out some days, I always felt, you know, like life was always worthwhile. It was always worth doing the service, and it always got me by, you know. So it's like, yeah, I feel I'm experiencing a wee bit the same. I feel kind of really happy inside, and I just have to kind of convey that to people a bit more, I think, you know.
Yeah, and it's important as well to be with like-minded devotees, I think.
Yeah.
In that situation, he's got a certain kind of mood or a certain vision and a certain kind of attitude, and he's struggling to find a group of people that can share that with him, so that he can kind of develop that and go deeper into it and act on it.
Yeah.
Obviously, in a weird sort of way, he meets those people in America.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's totally the most unexpected place and people, isn't it?
Because it's the hippies that want to change the world. That they've kind of got this grand vision. Obviously, they've got absolutely no idea how to do it. But like, he kind of meets his kindred spirits in New York, and that's where it kind of all happens. Is when he's in the right association with the right kind of people, and he's got nothing against people that aren't on the same kind of like wavelength, but you just have to kind of move on, I guess. I mean, one Prabhupada disciple said to us, to Hema and I, he said he came here and he's from America. He came and he liked what we were doing. And he said, you know, people will come and some people might come, they might not like what you're doing. And they might want to change it or whatever. And, you know, for those people can just go somewhere else. ISKCON's a big place, not in a rude way, but he was like, you know, like if people don't like what you're doing, they can just go and find other people somewhere.
Yeah.
And so we kind of thought, oh, that's quite interesting. Like, you haven't got to try and please everyone. You just want to be with people that are like-minded, which is quite natural, actually. And so it's happening with Prabhupada in the book, right? It's like it's there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been surprised myself in the past, you know, some of the people that took part, you know. I mean, there's a wee hippie community not far from here, and I was taking a walk over there and making friends with some people, you know. And there was this woman there, right? She was always like can of beer, joint, you know, very loud, you know. And I was like, okay, I'm staying away from her, you know. I wouldn't try and like, you know, preach to her in any way. And I stayed away. But then one day I went over, right, and she said to me, oh, I met your friend Tony. And I was like, Tony? And then I caught on all hopes of John. She says, I met him. She says, that was nice meeting him. She says, I bought a book. I says, that's nice, very nice of you. And she says, I talked to him for about 10 minutes. It was really nice. So after that, I started getting a wee bit friendly with her. I'd take some ice cream over, offer it, give her some ice cream, things like that. So then we had an opening day of our Goranga Hall. We converted this old barn and we had an opening day and invited my friend from the hippie community. I spoke to Prana, our temple president, about it, and I was like, do you think I should invite him? He's like, don't know. What if he turn up with wellies and anoraks on and the MPs? I was like, let's take a chance to invite him. So I invited my friend over. And so we're having a gathering, the MP and all that, all these dignitaries are there. So I sees my friend and I goes over and says hello, and I see him sitting, there's a woman with him, well dressed and all that. And I saw my friend and I gave him a wave and I walked by, but I didn't recognize the woman. So then I went back to my friend and I said hello and we were having a chat. Then I looked again at the woman and I thought, oh my God, it's her. It was her. It was drinking beer, you know. And she dressed herself up. She had a flower in her lapel and she looked really, you know, she'd really made an effort, you know. Because I said to my friend Stevie, I says, you know, you can come over and bring a friend over, you know. So we brought her over and I was like, my God, you know. I thought what reminded me then was a story that Shama Sundar, the Prabhupada disciple, told. He says, if you stick your neck out for Krishna, if you go out your way for Krishna, Krishna's got no option but to help you. So I'm taking a chance going to these places, you know, they are like out and out happy joints, you know. So I'm taking a chance, you know, it's like they're the opposite of the four regulative principles. They're trying to break the regulative principles, we're trying to follow them, you know. But so I could see, I thought that's Krishna reciprocating with me, that's Krishna showing me what he can do, you know. It's like, you know, arranging for her to come over, you know, because, well, they say, you know, we are not the doers, right? We are not, as Krishna working, you know, directing the wanderings of all living entities, fulfilling our desires, yeah, to engage people, but ultimately we can't do that without Krishna, you know. So I was very happy with that. It was like, wow, I didn't expect her to take part, you know, and come over to the occasion. And we had a good laugh when we were sitting taking prasadam as well. So that kind of made the day for me. It was, I mean, I was more happier that she'd come over than that the MPs had turned up and people like that, you know what I mean? I was happier that she'd come, you know. It was like, you know, she really made an effort, and she's saying to me, I scrub up well and all that, don't I, you know, because usually I'd seen her and she was like, you know, no, exactly, twitchy, you know. So yeah, it was like, it's, if we go out, you know, it's, my experience is it's amazing who will take part, and we can't always tell ourselves, you know. I think it's good we give everybody a chance, you know.
Yeah. You can never tell who was. There's lots of stories of, in the Swami tells a good story about that devotee Pigpen, they called him. They
Yeah.
and
But you know,
yeah.
When I was going over to that hippie community, do you know, well, he's the temple president at the time. He's not temple president anymore, the ex-temple president. He was like that to me. You're wasting your time, don't bother, you know, we've tried. And I was like, no, I'm sure I can do something. You know, I'm sure I can do something. And I went over, and it really worked out, because that guy, my friend over there as well, he put me on to a guy that's got an orchard, right? 200 fruit trees. The guy just, you know, said to me, just you work the orchard, you get the fruit, you know. He put us on to the local orchard conservation group. The first Saturday morning we went down there, they gave us a check, £500 to buy fruit trees for Eco Farm, you know. So it really worked out. So, you know, I kind of like, I just did that because I wanted to do it, you know what I mean? And even although I was advised kind of, you're wasting your time, I still did it, and it worked out, you know, it worked out really, really well, you know. And they're still my friends, those people. I've built a friendship over the last 15 years with them, you know. They're like devotees in a sense, you know what I mean? Because devotees all different levels, isn't it? I mean, devotion is in the heart. It's not like in a box, you know what I mean? So even people who don't chant and follow principles, they're devotees to a certain extent, isn't they? And who knows who will go back to Godhead at the time of death, what they'll be thinking of, you know? Somebody might be thinking like, oh, that prasadam he gave me was really good, you know? At the time of their death, and that's it, that's the same, you know. Who knows, you know, it's broad, isn't it? It's very, very broad, you know.
And who knows who did something like that for us in a previous life, you know?
Yeah, sure, who knows who we were in previous lives, you know. It's like, I mean, some of the things I've been through in this life, I'm thinking, my God, if I was in the heavenly planets in my last life, I don't want to go back, you know. It's like, if this is how I end up, you know, after that, you know.
Yeah. You know, it's and that's Prabhupada's example, was that he was, you know, a kind friend, you know, to people that he met. It wasn't, it's a kind of neophyte attitude, just to sort of, to not really, you know, to not to see Krishna in people's hearts.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
You're trying to get off that platform and be a bit more mature and see Krishna everywhere. So yeah, making friendships like that is I mean, we have it at like the university campus and around. It's nice in Canterbury that there's a security guard at our local supermarket. He's an Indian guy. He's a Christian. I don't think he'll ever come and chant with us, but he's an Indian guy. You know, there's just people all around town that just know us, and like then they don't even come to programs. They're not really interested, but they just think we're nice people. And some, you know, we give them some food, or they see us in the street, or, you know, maybe we've given them a book or something, or whatever. The guy comes to fix the leaky tap, he gets a book and free lunch, and, you know, whatever, like, you know, the builder or decorator comes around or something. So it's just about just being a friend, trying to be a friend to everybody in whatever way you can at the level they're at, you know, whatever relationship and friendship you can have with that person you have. And if it's not going to go very deep, then that's all right, isn't it? But it's better than just ignoring everybody, and, you know, just trying to be as much of a friend as you can, I guess.
Yeah, I love that sort of thing. You know, we went out a walk yesterday afternoon. We're talking to an old woman. We gave her a few vegetables from her allotment, and, you know, waved to a few people, see a few people, you know, and you know, people come to our door with like plums and potatoes and things like that, you know, they don't chant or anything or read, but they, like, you know, they come to the door and give us things. And when we're out, I go up to my lot and they're all giving us things. And yeah, neighbours. And I walked in the supermarket, I was in Edinburgh on Friday, and this guy was like, oh, Hare Krishna, you know, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, security guard again, you know, because I had the tilak on, you see. And I saw the guy looking at me when I walked in, and I was like, what's this guy looking at me for, you know? It's like, and then he went, Hare Krishna, you know, and I was like, Hare Krishna, you know, he seemed interested, you know. I usually just walk in the supermarket and nobody really looks at you or anything, but this guy looking at me, then he's like, Hare Krishna, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think that's very important, like, our neighbours, you know, we give them prasadam, they give us things, you know, and people in the street, we give them some fruit. When we get too much, they give us some. We go a walk in the village, we speak to local government people and things like that, you know, and you become part of their everyday life, you know. And I noticed myself in the past that, say I was working on a project and there were people there, they didn't chant Hare Krishna, maybe I was the only one chanting Hare Krishna. But after 2 or 3 years, you know, Krishna consciousness became a little part of their lives, you know, an accepted part of their lives, you know what I mean? And I liked that a lot. It was like, they just accepted me and my ways, and you know, it just became an accepted part of their life, because I built up friendships like in the gardening communities and that over the last 20 years, you know, and I like that part of my life, actually, you know, I really do like that part of my life. It's deep in one sense, you know, it's deep in one sense that they're souls and we're engaging them. And Krishna says, even if you're a friend to my devotee, you're very dear to me, you know. So, you know, because you feel for people that are suffering, don't you? You feel for them, you want to do something for them. And if people are becoming friends with us, you know, Krishna is going to smile upon them, you know, at the time of their death and that, you know. So, yeah, I think it's a very, very important, and I think ISKCON in general, we really have to do that. We really have to relate to people on an everyday normal basis, you know, normal in one sense. I don't mean we should become like them, but, you know, normal to me means be Krishna conscious. But, you know, I think it's important to relate to people in a general lifestyle, you know. I think it's very important, and I think it gives me a lot of satisfaction in life, you know. It gives me a lot of satisfaction in life that I know my neighbours wish me well and I wish them well, and people in the local village and even people in the cities I make friends with over the years, you know. It really, you know, I don't feel such a, you know, weirdo, such a, you know, I'm not really part of society, because ISKCON really should be like, you know, a part of the society, you know, an accepted part of society, you know. I do feel ISKCON should be an accepted, not like a group that are living separate from society, you know what I mean? And personally myself, I'm prepared to take the chance to go out and give, even if I have to, you know, sort of pay with my consciousness at times, you know. I do feel I do, to be honest. You know, it's like Prabhupada said, I don't eat meat, but Prabhupada said to certain devotees at one time, you know, well, if you have to eat meat, just eat it. And the devotees, well, what about my consciousness? Prabhupada says, damn your consciousness, just preach. I mean, okay, we don't take that as our life and the soul, but I do take that mood a little bit. I know I'm going to get a bit affected by the modes if I go certain places and mix with certain people in a certain way, but I know it's going to spread Krishna consciousness, and I'm prepared to do that. And I know everybody doesn't understand, so I kind of just keep some things to myself, you know what I mean? I feel, you know, personality, isn't there, you know? It's like Krishna knows what I'm doing, you know? So I know and I have spoke to devotees as well. I've been like, do you think I should keep you know, doing what I'm doing, because I mean, it's working out for the temple. It makes a lot of money for the temple. It gets a lot of people along, but my God, you know, my consciousness at times, you know, it's I better stay away from the temple today, I think, you know, a bit like that, you know. But I mean, there's personality there, isn't there? It's like we're in an international society. We, you know, your strengths are, you know, my weaknesses, sort of thing, you know. You know, in an international society, we can, you know, associate with each other and gain strength from each other, you know. I feel that way, definitely, you know. I definitely feel that way. And because if we're confident in what we're doing, you know, and personally myself, I want to approach the governments a bit more. I've got a really good friendship with our local MP, and I want to have enough people behind me just to be able to say, you know, okay, this is our proposition in a way that the government can't say no, because we've got so many people behind us, you know. But they have to accept or back down, you know. Because Nana Orion, he made a good point. He says, when you're getting your photograph taken with people like the Dalai Lama, the Pope, you know, important people, don't just give them a book. He says, challenge them. And I thought that's good, because they're calling themselves leaders. So, you know, we can tell them, okay, you know, you're a leader, you're in a position of a leader, so act like it, you know, set a good example. Do something for the people, you know, don't just, you know, pose as a leader and, you know, do something, you know, and, you know, we can advise them on what to do, you know. I want to get into that sort of thing, you know. Although I would say you have to be careful doing that sort of thing, you know. You have to be very, very careful. You have to be experienced, and you really have to be confident, you know. If you know, approach somebody, I mean, like, and you want to put something towards them that where they can't say no, it's like it takes. I mean, I remember I used to go out in books, and you know, I'd build up and build up and build up. After about 3 hours into the book distribution, I would get a guy and I would just be like, I'd just get him in a way where he couldn't say no, you know what I mean? And I knew it. It's like, I've got this guy, you know, I'm just waiting on the money coming out, you know, I've got him. He's good to give, he can't say no. And, you know, even one guy was like that to me once, you know, he says to me, you got me there. It was like, because I just, you know, so I'm doing, you know, I want to do the same thing with like, you know, government leaders and things like that. I just build up to, you know, I can put a proposition to them where they can't say no, you know. It can be done. It can be done. Like Prabhupada was saying, he thinks big. It can be done. I know it can be done. I know that sort of thing can be done. We can influence governments. I know that. I'm confident we can do that. But it is teamwork. It will take teamwork. I couldn't approach anybody on my own. You know, you have to have something to present to them. You know, we've got all these people behind us. They're all qualified. This is the people we've helped. You know, this is, you know, an example of what we've done, you know, we have to do all that, but it can be done. I do feel it can be done, you know. I'm going to go for it anyway.
There's no loss.
No loss. Well, nothing and nobody can stop us, you know.
Yeah. You're
talking about this guy, this devotee came along and told you, people may not like what you're doing. Yeah, everyone isn't exactly, you know, a big fan. They kind of like what I do. People really like what I do. Or the devotees, you know, they generally really like what I do, but they don't like, you know, some of the things I say at times. And I do admit, yeah, it's a bit much, you know, I will admit that. But, you know, it's like, I know nothing and nobody can stop me, you know, nothing and nobody. And that way, you know, yeah, nothing to lose, everything to gain, you know, we might as well have fun, like you say, you know. I don't want to sit around the house just, you know, like, you know, waiting on something happening, waiting on, you know, the delivery man coming with the boga and then, you know, knock up a feast and Hare Krishna, you know. It's like, okay, what do you do after that? The feast was great, it was brilliant, it was fantastic, you know, the guests were great, brilliant, we had a great time, you know. It's like, I've got to, like, you know, give it to others, you know. Well, you see the state of the place, you know, some of the things like at the universities and that people are putting forward, it's getting really like, they're talking about don't insult people, but I feel, you know, certain people are definitely insulting people's intelligence is some of the things they're putting forward and expecting you to accept, you know. It's just an insult to intelligence, you know. Yeah, better not say too much tonight.
Well, it's 8 o'clock, so it's probably time to wrap up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reed and Andy Mirage would say, I better not say any more or I'll get in even more trouble than I'm in.
Okay. Thanks so much, Prabhu. Hare
Yeah,
Krishna.
I really enjoyed your reading. It was so nice. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this as usual.
Great.
Thanks very much.
I'm
Great.
looking forward to doing it next week.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thanks, both of you. Hare Bo. Yeah, see you soon. Hare Krishna.